The night of the NBA draft is the night every basketball player dreams of when they're coming through the ranks, and being able to hear your name called by the commissioner announcing that you've been selected is a memory every player that actually makes it that far remembers for the rest of their lives. But unfortunately, not everybody gets to experience this. Every year, 60 names get called, but obviously more than 60 players declare for the draft. So for those that don't get their names called, they can use this disappointment as a source of motivation to keep working even harder towards accomplishing their goals of playing in the NBA and proving everyone wrong. This brings us to the topic of today's video, where I will be discussing 7 players in particular that did not hear their name called on draft night that I still believe can make a career for themselves in the NBA. Before we start though, if you haven't already, consider subscribing to the channel if you enjoy the content. We're approaching the 100,000 mark, and I can't tell you how much I would appreciate your support in getting us to that milestone. Now with that being said, let's begin. The first undrafted player we'll be discussing is Devin Dotson from Kansas. Dotson was leading one of the best teams in the country before the season got shut down, and what makes him such a dangerous player out on the floor is his next level speed. Dotson is legitimately one of the fastest players in the whole draft class, and maybe even ranks amongst the best in the whole NBA. With the ball in his hands, he has the blow-by speed to get by his defender, he has a tight, strong handle of the ball to get to his spots, and a high basketball IQ to make the right play once he penetrates. The reason he likely got passed on is because he's somewhat undersized at 6'2" while being pretty skinny, and his jumper isn't the most consistent, but he was an 18-point per game scorer leading a top college team, and I think this is a case of scouts overthinking the measurables. Dotson can play, he's a competitor, and with the Bulls signing him to a 2-way contract, I think he'll do well working his way up in that organization. The next undrafted player we'll be discussing is Mason Jones from Arkansas. Jones was a top 10 scorer in the country, putting up 22 points per game last season, and he also led the entire SEC conference in scoring, showing he's one of the best all-around bucket getters available. Jones is a methodical scorer with the ball in his hands, knowing all of the right ways to go about beating his defender. He's a strong finisher at the rim and a good shot creator off the dribble, and when he gets into the lane, he welcomes contact and draws a ton of free throws, actually leading the country in that aspect. Funnily enough, he signed in Houston on a 2-way contract after going undrafted, and we all know how much the Rockets enjoy getting to the free throw line. He's not the best athlete, and being 22 years old definitely didn't help him much either, but quite simply, he can play, and he's going to show it when his name is called. The next undrafted player for discussion is Markus Howard from Marquette. In a similar light to Jones, who we just discussed, Howard is an unbelievable scorer of the basketball, as he just led the entire country in scoring by putting up 28 points per game, and he did it in a program that competes in a tough Big East conference, so it's not like he was putting up numbers against scrubs either. Howard was a 4-year player, and in the last 3 years, he's averaged over 20 points, so it can't even be argued that it was a fluke, because his production has been consistently elite throughout his college career. He can get his shot off from anywhere on the floor, and he makes tough shots look easy, which are 2 qualities that good NBA scorers need. He was passed on likely because he's only 5'11", and undersized guards never get the benefit of the doubt, but his production speaks for itself, and with the Nuggets signing him to a 2-way contract, I definitely like his chances of him developing into an impact scorer off the bench for them. The next undrafted player looking to make a name for himself is Josh Hall, who actually went straight from high school to the draft. He was a 4-star recruit in this year's class, and instead of going to college or playing overseas trying to get to the league in the traditional sense, he took his chances right away, but unfortunately he went undrafted. But he is now with the Thunder on a 2-way contract, where I think will be the perfect situation for him because the Thunder are rebuilding now and opportunities for unproven players will be available. He was a late bloomer who really burst onto the scene last year as a 6'7" wing with very ideal skills for a player at the next level, but he's going to need some work, likely down in the G League, before he's actually ready for the NBA. He's a project for the future, but his timeline aligns perfectly with the Thunder's, and they will have the patience with him necessary for him to develop, and if all goes according to plan, then they very well might have just found a big-time steal without even having to use a draft pick. The next undrafted player that I'm certain will prove everyone wrong is Myles Powell from Seton Hall. Powell was one of the best scorers in the entire country, similar to Markus Howard, who also played in the Big East, but unlike Howard, Powell actually has decent size for an NBA guard, but a lot of the typical factors that scare teams in the draft away unfortunately applied to him. He's an older 4-year player, and unfortunately his senior season was a bit of a down year after having won the Big East Player of the Year award the season before, but a lot of his inconsistencies last season can be attributed to him having to carry Seton Hall harder than he ever previously had on offense, and at the next level, that simply just won't be the case. He's a great 3-level scorer, there isn't a shot he can't make, and he would make a terrific 6th man that can create offense for the second unit. The Knicks signed him to a 2-way contract, and they've actually had success finding undrafted scoring guards in the past, with Alonzo Trier being the most recent example, so Powell could definitely do well in this situation. The next undrafted player looking to prove everyone wrong moving forward is Killian Tillie from Gonzaga. To put it simply, Tillie is one of the most talented big men in the entire draft class, but throughout his entire Gonzaga career, injuries constantly held him back from ever displaying that talent on a consistent basis, and obviously, injury woes are a red flag for NBA scouts. However, when he has been healthy, his offensive game is literally perfect for the modern NBA as a big man. He's a career 44% shooter from 3, he's one of the most efficient scorers around the basket, and his overall offensive efficiency numbers as a scorer ranked in the 98th percentile in college last year. The Grizzlies picked him up on a 2-way contract, who have shifted more towards a youth movement, and if Tillie can maintain his health, he's definitely a diamond in the rough for them. And finally, the last undrafted gem we'll be discussing today is ty-shon Alexander from Creighton. Alexander is a 6'4" guard with a 6'8" wingspan, and his route to carving out a role at the next level is on the defensive side of things. He's a phenomenal perimeter defender, and he uses that length of his to pester ball handlers, but outside of that, he also just has a very high defensive IQ. He knows where to be at all times, and he has great technique on the ball. Along with that, he's a very good perimeter shooter, and as a 3-and-D guard, he would fit perfectly into a lineup alongside a primary ball handler and playmaker that might struggle a bit on the defensive side of things, as many star guards do nowadays. He's the perfect complementary piece to a lineup, which often gets glossed over, but the importance of players like Alexander cannot be understated. He's on a 2-way contract with Phoenix now, playing alongside Devin Booker and Chris Paul, and I think he'll thrive there. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what you think about these undrafted players. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.